I got an entry-level job in the Human Resources Department right after graduating college. The first 2 months were a bit rough, but I was lucky to have a really good mentor. Most of the time things went smoothly, though there were exceptions from time to time. One such exception was the peculiar case of Martin Klein. Martin was a middle-aged man with an unremarkable tenure in the company, working in data entry, a job where one could easily fade into the background. And Martin did just that, until he didn't. It started with the employee satisfaction surveys. Every year they were anonymous, yet Martin's responses were always identifiable by the peculiar way he wrote his G's and Y's, almost like they were reaching back into the past. My mentor Clara chuckled the first time she saw it, saying, "That's Martin for you, always leaving his mark." Then came the day when Martin didn't turn in his survey. It was odd, but not alarming. However, what was unsettling was his sudden change in behavior. He began to appear at work early, staying late, his eyes always slightly too wide, his smile a fraction too broad. His productivity skyrocketed, but his interactions became off. He'd start laughing a bit too long at mundane things, or sometimes not at all when the situation called for it. Eventually curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to review his file. Everything seemed normal until I reached the emergency contact section. The name listed was Agnes Klein, his mother, but according to the file, she had passed away over a decade ago. When I mentioned this to Clara, she paled and told me to leave it be, muttering something about not stirring old ghosts. But the story didn't end there. One evening, as I was leaving late, I passed by Martin's desk. There, in the dim light of the exit signs, I saw him, or what I thought was him, hunched over his computer. His fingers didn't move across the keyboard, but the screen flickered with data entries, files opening and closing at an impossible speed. I blinked, and he was looking directly at me, his face expressionless. The next day, I came in to find Martin's desk empty. His computer was gone, and personal items vanished. HR also had no record of his termination or resignation. When I inquired, I was met with blank stares and a swift change of topic. Clara took me aside, her voice a whisper. "Some things, dear, are better left forgotten. For your sake, let Martin be one of them." Weeks turned into months, and Martin's name was never mentioned again. It was as if he had been erased from existence. However, late at night, when I was alone in the office, I would sometimes hear the soft clatter of keys, or see a shadow move in the corner of my eye, always accompanied by the scent of old, musty paper. A scent I came to associate with Martin. The most unsettling part? New employee files started to appear with the same peculiar handwriting. The G's and Y's looping back in that same manner. No one else seemed to notice, or perhaps they chose not to. And every so often, when I look at the newest recruits, there's a flicker in their eyes, a too wide smile that doesn't quite reach their eyes, reminding me eerily of Martin. In HR, we manage people's beginnings and endings at the company, but I've learned that there are some employees, or perhaps their echoes, that we can never truly let go. For a few years, I used to work at this really shady company. I don't want to give my name or where I worked, but I will say I saw management do some things which were most likely blatantly illegal. The company was a mid-sized tech firm, but it had the soul of something far older, something from the times when shadows in the workplace weren't just metaphorical. The HR department, where I worked, was the epicenter of the unease that permeated the office. Even from the very beginning, there was something off about the HR manager, Mrs. Wren. She had this unblinking stare that seemed to look through you, right into your darkest secrets. Her office was at the end of a dimly lit corridor, and it always felt colder there, no matter the season. One day, a new policy was introduced. It was called the Personal Alignment Program, or PAP. Employees were required to attend one-on-one sessions with Mrs. Wren. The purpose, we were told, was to align personal goals with company vision, but the sessions were nothing like career counseling. During my session, Mrs. Wren asked me to close my eyes and visualize my future in the company. Her voice was soothing, almost hypnotic. As I sat there, eyes shut, I felt a chilling sensation, as if someone was rummaging through my thoughts. When I opened my eyes, she was smiling, but her eyes were cold and calculating. "You're a good fit," she murmured, but the way she said fit made my skin crawl. Rumors started to spread. Employees who went through PAP started acting differently. They were more compliant, less questioning, as if their personalities had been adjusted somehow. But the real horror began when people started to disappear. Not immediately, but over weeks, after showing signs of what was whispered about as misalignment. I remember Tom from accounting, always vocal about workers' rights. After his session, he was quieter, but still himself. Then a month later, he was gone. HR claimed he was transferred, but there was no record, no farewell, just an empty desk. Curiosity and fear led me to investigate. Late one night, I accessed the HR database. There I found files on every employee, but they were not ordinary HR files. They included psychological profiles, fears, dreams, even things you'd only tell a therapist. And for those who disappeared, there was a note, realigned for optimal corporate synergy. One evening, as the office was emptying, I ventured into Mrs. Wren's office. In her desk I found an old leather-bound book. It wasn't anything you'd expect to find in an HR office, to be honest. It was filled with what looked like incantations, symbols, and notes on mind-shaping and will-bending. The realization hit me like a cold wave. The PAP wasn't just a creepy HR initiative. It was something arcane and dark. They weren't just firing people or transferring them. They were altering them, or worse, erasing them. I decided then and there I had to leave, but not before trying to expose them. I copied files and took pictures. But just as I was about to leave, there she was, Mrs. Wren. I turned and saw her standing in the doorway, her silhouette framed by the corridor's dim light. "You've been very curious," she said, her voice devoid of warmth. "But curiosity can be corrected." I don't exactly remember what happened next. I woke up in my bed the following day, feeling like a part of me was missing, hollowed out. I quit the job, moved cities, and changed my name, but even now I sometimes feel like I'm being watched, like part of me is still there, trapped in that cold office, forever aligned with the company's dark vision. And every so often, I hear Mrs. Wren's voice in my dreams, reminding me that some places you can leave, but they never quite leave you. At the company where I work, we have to do yearly compliance training. It seems like the format is slightly different each year, like the company can't decide on one specific vendor to do the training. But this year, something felt particularly off. The training module arrived in our inboxes with the subject line, "New Horizons in Employee Engagement." The email itself was eerily devoid of the usual corporate cheer, just a link with no preview, and the HR department signature in a font that seemed too stiff and too formal. I clicked on the link, expecting the usual videos about workplace ethics or data protection. Instead, I was greeted by a stark black screen, with white text asking me to prepare for a journey into the self. The cursor blinked like a slow, deliberate heartbeat. The module started with basic questions, but they quickly veered into the personal. Have you ever felt unappreciated? Do you trust your colleagues? What are your deepest fears regarding your career? Each question felt intrusive, probing deeper into my psyche than any HR material should. Then came the scenario playthroughs, but these weren't typical either. They were immersive, first-person narratives where I had to make decisions that would supposedly affect my career. In one scenario, I was in a meeting where I had to choose between reporting a colleague for misconduct or covering for them to gain favor. The catch? The colleague looked exactly like my childhood friend, down to the nervous tick of pulling at his earlobe. As I progressed, the scenarios grew darker. There was one where I found myself alone in the office at night, hearing whispers from the vents, seeing shadows that moved just out of sight. Each choice I made seemed to twist the environment further into a labyrinth of my own subconscious fears. The psychological pressure was mounting, but I just couldn't stop. It was as if the program had latched onto my will, compelling me to see it through. The final module was titled The Ultimate Compliance. Here, the program presented me with a mirror-like screen, reflecting not my face, but my office, with figures that looked like my coworkers, but they moved slightly out of sync with reality. A voice, soothing yet chilling, spoke. To comply, one must understand the cost of non-compliance. You are part of the corporate body. What will you sacrifice to ensure its survival? The choices given were unthinkable. Sacrifice your passion for another's promotion, erase an error at the cost of your ethics, or surrender your silence about the company's darkest secret. I chose the last option, driven by a mix of curiosity and desperation to end the session. The screen went black, then slowly, text appeared. Thank you for your honesty. Your compliance is noted. The next day, the office was buzzing with an unusual quiet. Colleagues avoided eye contact, and there was a palpable tension. No one talked about the training, yet I could see in their eyes the same haunted look that I felt. Weeks later, I learned through the grapevine that those who picked different options faced repercussions, demotions, sudden transfers, or worse, they became office pariahs. I, having chosen to unveil a secret, was left untouched, but the knowledge of what I'd done, or rather what the program had made me confess, gnawed at me. The scariest part? No one ever received an email or memo about the training again. It was as if it had never happened. But the change in the workplace, the way we all became more guarded, more compliant, spoke volumes. The HR department had tapped into something deep and controlling, and now we were all bound by an unspoken pact of silence, living in the shadow of our own confessions. This one time, me and my coworker Bob were chosen by our department to go to this HR professional development conference thing. I'm still not 100% sure why we were chosen, as neither me nor Bob are the most outstanding or the most lackluster. The conference was held in an old, sprawling hotel out in the countryside, the kind with endless corridors that all look the same. You know the ones, adorned with faded wallpaper and portraits of stern-faced people from another era. However, even from the start, something felt off. The attendees were unusually quiet, almost robotic in their interactions. The first night, after the introductory sessions, Bob mentioned he felt like we were being watched. I laughed it off then, but soon I couldn't shake the feeling either. The conference promised innovative sessions on employee engagement and psychological well-being, but the topics took a strange turn. One workshop was titled Maximizing Human Potential Through Controlled Environments, which turned out to be a thinly veiled discussion on psychological manipulation in the workplace. The presenter, a man with unnaturally still features, spoke with a monotone voice about removing inefficiencies in human behavior. That night, I couldn't sleep. The hotel felt like it was breathing, walls whispering secrets in languages I couldn't understand. I decided to take a walk to clear my head, but the hallways seemed to shift, leading me not back to my room, but to an unmarked door. Out of curiosity, or perhaps something else, I opened it. Inside was a room filled with screens, each showing different employees from various companies, including Bob and me. It was like a surveillance hub, but the footage wasn't just from the office. There were home scenes, private moments, all under observation. Panicked, I found Bob the next morning and told him everything. His reaction was not what I expected. He seemed resigned, almost as if he knew something I didn't. "It's all part of it," he said cryptically. "They chose the in-betweens, not too good, not too bad, to test new methods. We're the control group." The final day's keynote was titled The Future of HR, Integration and Assimilation. The speaker, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes, talked about how human resources could evolve to not just manage, but to become part of the workforce, ensuring optimal productivity by eliminating personal discrepancies. As he spoke, I noticed staff members locking the doors discreetly. The attendees, or at least what I thought were attendees, started to look less diverse, more uniform, their expressions blank. Bob leaned over, whispering, "They're not just training HR, they're creating them. Or should I say, us." His voice had a mechanical edge to it now. I tried to leave, but the exits were sealed. The last thing I remember was a sharp pain at the back of my neck, and then nothing but a cold, clinical light. When I woke up, I was back at work, like nothing had happened. But now, there's a new efficiency to my actions, a new understanding of my role in the company's organism. I see Bob, and there's a flicker of something in his eyes, perhaps a vestige of horror, or maybe just a glitch in his new programming. We work well together, better than ever before, perfectly synchronized. But every now and then, I catch my reflection, and for a split second I don't recognize the person staring back. There's a depth to my eyes that wasn't there before, a void where once there was me. And I wonder, when I'm alone, if I'm still alone in my own mind. Or maybe now there's a permanent HR office there too. Like most people, I wasn't exactly a fan of our HR department. But what I didn't know was that our HR was not like most. It was something far more sinister, masquerading under the banner of human resources. It started subtly. Our office, a tech firm known for its vibrant culture and innovative spirit, began to change. The first sign was the new mental wellness program introduced by HR. It was mandatory. Each employee was given a smart device, something like a watch, to monitor stress levels, sleep patterns, and even our conversations for key emotional indicators. We were told it was for our health, to ensure a balanced work-life integration. I remember the day I wore it, feeling a prickling discomfort, not from the device itself, but from the idea of being watched and monitored. But the real horror unfolded when colleagues started to disappear. Not vanished in the physical sense, but their personalities, their quirks, the very essence of what made them unique, were gone. They became model employees, efficient, emotionless, and eerily compliant. The company's performance skyrocketed, projects were completed ahead of schedule, innovations flowed like never before. But at what cost? The office was silent except for the tapping on keyboards, the air thick with an unspoken dread. I decided to dig deeper one night, staying late when I knew the office would be nearly empty. Accessing the HR files wasn't easy, but what I found was a file named Project Homogeneity. It detailed how the HR department, in collaboration with some shadowy tech division, was using the data from our devices to optimize human behavior, stripping away what they deemed inefficiencies like creativity, dissent, or emotional depth. They were crafting the perfect workforce, devoid of any human unpredictability. The psychological manipulation was horrifying. They used subliminal messages, biofeedback, and even altered office environments to reshape minds. But the file also mentioned an antidote protocol, a way to reverse the process, developed as a failsafe. Just as I was about to download this information, the lights flicked on. There stood the head of HR, her smile not reaching her cold eyes. "You shouldn't have snooped," she whispered. I thought it was the end for me, but then something totally unexpected happened. The door burst open, and in walked Elon Musk, of all people. Apparently he had been in talks to acquire a stake in our company, but grew suspicious of the unnatural growth and obedience. "Enough," he declared, his voice cutting through the tension. With him were his own team of tech experts. They quickly took over the systems, initiating the antidote protocol. Musk stood there, overseeing everything, talking about the importance of human individuality, the freedom to think, to challenge, to be inefficiently human. As the protocol ran, the office began to revert. People blinked as if waking from a long sleep, confusion, and then relief spreading across their faces. The HR head was escorted out, her experiment in human engineering dismantled. Elon didn't just save us, he restored our humanity. He spoke to us later about the dangers of unchecked technology, how efficiency must never come at the cost of what makes us human. Under his temporary stewardship, our company was not just about making profits, but about fostering innovation with ethics. That night, what could have been the start of a dystopian nightmare turned into a tale of liberation, thanks to a man who valued the chaos and brilliance of free thought over the eerie silence of conformity.